Hello, everyone. Today we are here with Tobi, aka Chibi-Works.
Hello.
Is there anything you would like to say before we get started?
Not really. If we both fumble, it's because we clearly haven't had enough coffee today.
That works. All right, we actually have a lot of questions for you. And the main set of questions is for your comics. Okay. So we'll go ahead and start off, though. How did you come up with your pen name?
The fabulous story of my wonderful pen name. So back a billion years ago, when I was in high school, I did have an affinity for drawing specifically chibis. So my friend would actually call me Little Miss Chibi. Then I thought it was the most adorable thing for like a cool minute. But then we got an assignment for my English class to make a web page and use like a name for your web page. And I thought I was going to use Chibi, and I didn't necessarily know what I was going to do after the fact, but I was like, oh, Chibi-Works, because normally he'd make fun of how much all I do was work, and there'd be chibis, and I was like, oh, let me just put the two together. And unfortunately, the one squished name was taken on DeviantArt by this fabulous Chibi-Works. I don't know who she is, but she makes like the cutest things. They're so pink. And then there was the dash, and then that's how it happened.
When did you first get interested in comics?
Okay, about a billion years before that, when I was in elementary school, I actually quite enjoyed reading Spider-Man comics. So I would read a lot of Stan Lee's stuff, and then eventually I just decided I was going to start my own comic-ish thing. And from there on, I just kind of had a love for drawing, even though I was absolutely terrible at it.
How have comics changed you and your life?
Well, I am not exactly the most social person in the entire universe. Kind of awkward in person. On the internet, nobody knows. But in person, I'm very awkward. So when it comes to working on comics and things like that, it gives me way to reach out to people without physically saying, oh, hey, I'm doing this. Come look at me. Look at me. It's more like they're seeing what I'm doing, and then it starts up a conversation. And honestly, that's awesome. And in addition to that, people are like, oh, from reading this, you inspired me to do this. And I think that's like the greatest achievement in my comic history. It's so awesome. And I think that's really like a big thing for me, is being able to do that for someone else like that was done for me.
Why did you start creating comics?
Well, as that's kind of socially awkward, so I was very lonely. I didn't actually quite have a lot of friends. A lot of kids would pick on me and bully me, so I didn't quite have the courage to speak to other people, so I would take it out in drawings. And not so much, murder. No murder was involved, but I was doing stuff that kind of I imagined what would make me happy. I did this one comic once. It was about this cat trying to chase a bird. It was like this Tom and Jerry feel type thing. It was awesome, personally. But I just wanted to find an escape because I really didn't like being by myself, but I couldn't voice it. So that's really how that influenced me personally.
What kind of medium and equipment do you use for your comics?
Yes, this is, to be fair, this is a very popular question. I use a tablet, and I use my art program, specifically Psy and Photoshop, though I'll just mainly use Photoshop for like special effects and words. And then my tablet's an Intuos. My bear wife, M, the small, she sent it to me. I was very happy because I go through tablets like people go through toothpicks.
What is the process to create a comic from start to finish?
That one's a fun one. Okay, so of course there's the basic understanding of the character, or characters, depending if it's going to be a comic focusing on one person, multiple peoples, or objects. It doesn't even have to be a person. I personally like to start with the end, because I know if I know what my main goal is going to be, it's going to be easier to figure out how to get there. So I just start with the end, and it doesn't stay the same. I can tell you right now, I ate pasta for breakfast has changed a total of 6 times, ending-wise. So during the last 2.5 years or so, I've been working on it. Another thing you have to make sure is scripting. You don't have to do super detailed, and Billy went to the store, then Billy stubbed his toe. No, but having a brief overview of, say, character A wants to go hang out with character B, but parent is in the way, or conflict is in the way, and you take it step by step and chunk by chunk. That way, eventually, you'll get these series of events that gets you to the ending, which is character A manages to make it to friend's house or something like that. Another thing, though, is sometimes people will start comics and lose interest and never finish the comic. And personally, I think I wouldn't say don't do that, because of course, if you're not, like, you're always going to hit a roadblock somewhere. But I think, I don't know, getting it done, at least get a piece of it done. So it's like you completed it. You might not have been like super inspired to get all the way to the part that you wanted to get it to, but getting to, say, this midway point where, they wound up meeting with a friend, happily ever after. You can leave it open-ended. Maybe somebody else can pick it up. Just leaving it open-ended when you acquire an audience, even if it's like 3 people, they want to see it end. You can't just leave them hanging like that. It's kind of hard for both them and you. I don't know. That's I don't know, my process. I'm not going to start a comic and not finish it, because that it's kind of personally frustrating.
Where do you get your inspiration?
A billion different things. I personally like to RP, so I'll do it a lot with some of my friends. I haven't had time for it recently, but I'll do RPs. I usually watch anime, and I'm guilty for watching cartoons. Cartoons are a lot of fun. Stuff to keep me watching animation, basically. As long as I'm able to watch an animation of some sort, it makes it easier for me to realize what my goals will be and how I need to get in there. Like, that's cool, gotta do that. Or this person uses this kind of element for this character, and I think that's a cool element, so maybe I should use it over here, see what happens. It definitely allows experimentation from my inspirations. It's pretty fun.
Is there anyone who influences your work?
I think 2 of my biggest influences are Poltergeist Cat. She's fabulous. And then Bleeding Heartworks. I love the way their styles are so, I wouldn't say rustic, but they're so appeasing to the eye. And honestly, I would like to have a lot of my stuff be very appeasing to the eye. I know I use a lot of flashy and bright colors, but sometimes not everybody's interested in flashy and bright colors. So those 2 are the 2 mainly art-wise that get me like really on top of trying to be, because their lines are clean and it's very aesthetically pleasing. It's just so, they're really awesome people.
What is the hardest part of creating a comic?
Keeping going. I know I said earlier, like, I don't stop a comic. I don't want to stop a comic. But there are points where I'm just like, dang, I don't like how this is going. I want to fix it. Like, there was a comic that I started on DeviantArt. It was called Be My Guardian. Basically was around this girl who wound up trying to replace Mother Nature because Mother Nature was basically dying. And I got like 13 pages in, and something happened, and I wound up stopping it because I didn't like basically the transition. So I've actually been working on it to get it resketched up and stuff. Definitely, when the flow isn't good, it bothers me. I eat pasta for breakfast. If I go back to the first 25 pages, the flow will probably bother me. So keeping pacing is something that's always been challenging for me, and that's probably the one thing that gets in my way when making a comic. I don't know. I'm still learning, so some of the stuff I go back and look over, it's just like, oh dear, I've done that terribly.
What is the funnest part of creating a comic?
Definitely when I get to interact with my audiences. It doesn't matter if it's like my chibi comic or my creepypasta comic, or even if I'm just drawing pictures on the side. It's the best part about making the comic is the community I get to build from the comic, because I've made a lot of friends on DeviantArt personally, and it's awesome. I've actually slowly been making friends on Tumblr too, which is like super cool. It's just that's probably the best part of the comic is being able to share it with them, and they share back with me, and we can create this bond ish thing. And I don't know, that's probably the best part about being able to do this comic, or any comic for that matter.
Do you ever get creator's block? And if so, how do you overcome it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. So I purposely I wouldn't say give myself. I joke around. I probably shouldn't, but I joke around and say I have art ADD. Sometimes I'll be working on one thing and suddenly switch to something else out of nowhere. I think I do that mainly because I know when I have a singular storyline running, I will hit roadblocks left and right. And it's really troublesome. So I purposely keep my mind focusing on like 4 different things at one time. Because if I can't do it here, then I'll go to someplace I can work until I get the idea to go back and finish it. So I try and keep my mind busy creatively. So even if like I'm walking down the street going to work and I'm like, oh, Lazzari, we'll eat this guy today. And I can write it down, and then I can go back and finish what this missing piece was so I can continue it. Of course, that doesn't work for everybody, but personally that works for me.
What is the earliest comic you remember working on?
Oh, I flash all the way back to 5th grade. I was like 9 years old, and I made this Tom and Jerry-esque comic. I know I mentioned it earlier. It was basically this cat and this bird, and this cat was trying to get this bird. I don't remember everything that happened, but I do know that the bird wound up like calling this bigger bird, and they beat up the cat, and the cat lost and went home sad. It was really dumb, and I personally wish I still had it. That was probably the first comic I'd ever done, way before I even started getting into the anime style.
How did I Eat Creepypasta for Breakfast come to be?
I was reading The Seer, and I was reading something else. I think it was the pasta comic that Comic Kit had going for a minute, and I was just like, oh, this is cool. I wasn't really into the fandom, so I didn't really know all that much. I didn't even know who Jeff the Killer was back then. But I was like, oh, I know who Slenderman is. I'm going to do something. And so I decided, I woke up one morning, I was like, I'm going to make a comic, guys. My friends were just like, oh dear, another one. And basically I just it was a spontaneous idea. And I kind of just went with it, and friggin' 2 years later and 13,000 interested people later, you know, it's like, clearly I made the good choice with spontaneously starting this up.
And I apologize if I say her name wrong, but how did Lazzari come to be?
Oh, you said it right. No worries. Lazzari. Okay. So honestly, people used to flame me back then because she looked like Sally. I was like, okay, no. This is going to clear all of this up. My first semester at college, I had an art history class. And during one of the conversations in the art history class, we brought up paintings and how different elements of paintings will influence like meanings behind it. So my teacher had drawn on the board an example of a painting. This was it was a grassy field with a tree and a girl in a white dress, basically symbolizing the white symbolizing innocence in the child, and this greenery like rebirth and things like that. And so I was sitting there and I was sketching it out on my notebook because I have no attention span sometimes. And I had sat there and I was like, well, what if I take this idea of innocence and alter it? Since I, was starting up that comic, I was like, you know what, I'll just take this person and bring it in there. And I actually got her name from Lazarus, and it's a biblical person. I do believe he wound up dying and came back 4 days later. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on this, people who are actually super religious and know what they're talking about. But he wound up dying, and then I do believe that, I don't know if it was Jesus or someone else of the godly figures allowed him rebirth. But the thing with her is after 3 miscarriages, her mother was able to give a child. And I had gone from there. That's kind of how I made Lazzari.
What are your future plans for the comic?
Finishing it. That's a good one. I know I would definitely like to kill off all of the characters, or at least most of the characters, because there's not a lot of, or if any, pasta comics currently running that have this good element of horror to it. And I know mine's got a lot of comedy in it and some drama. And then when the gore hits, it really hits. But I just definitely want to reinstill the fact that these guys may appear as, you know, they can have humanish interactions, but ultimately they're still really bad creatures. And moving it along, I would love to make the comic. Get the comic, definitely its darker feel with, you know, silver lining to the mushroom cloud. Eventually it coming to this terribly painful end that hurts the hearts of millions.
Would you like to tell us about your fantasy comic series?
Oh, yes. Chewbacca. That has been, I started that one in 7th grade. It's been like oh dang it, now I gotta count. 9 years? 9-year project? 10-year project? I don't know. I've been working on it for a really long time. And the storyline follows this fantastical, English, I swear. This fantasy-based universe. It's got 27 planets. It's ruled by a set of gods, and each planet has basically built itself individually. All the planets, for the most part, are inhabitable. The 8th planet, which is named after the solar system, is planet Chewbacca. We follow this character. Her name is Tobi, and basically we're following her life from the start of this 14-year-old girl all the way up until she's 20, and then there's this huge war that hits. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but definitely it's chock full of comedy. It's got adventure, action. They do like to break the fourth wall every 10 minutes or so. So it's definitely cute and interesting. Personally, I think it's interesting. I don't know, maybe that's just bias. That's pretty much what the comic mainly has ensued for it. Right now it's just kind of starting, so we only have spars up. So only fighting scenes right now.
Would you like to tell us about Sin series?
Yeah, Sin series. That one is on DeviantArt. That one is basically, it's set around this sci-fi based action. It's in a continuum where the Bible does not exist. So these sins and virtues and some of the names for the characters are all like in this continuum where there was no such thing as the Bible. So it's not really referencing at the time. But basically it's this AI, his name is Cain, who wound up terminating his sibling AI, Abel, and destroying this facility called Virtue Core, where inside these high-level ranking doctors were building machines that could be used for several different purposes, most of which being war. One of this sets of machines were instructed to be lifelike, human-like. So they built these models and called them sin models. Of course, there's 7 of them, and they wound up stopping at 7 and beginning another project because there was an issue with some of the maintenance involved. After Cain takes over the facility, he winds up terminating all of the doctors aside from a couple of them. And the reason for that is they've got synthetic organs from an explosion they got caught in previously. During the time when Cain had control of the facility and everyone was gone, 7 of the models, who were the sin models, wound up getting activated and left as basically they have to go take down Cain so they can live perfectly ordinary lives and save the doctors inside. So their main goal right now is to find their persons, which is their fusion partner or sin form partner. That way they can go back and kick Cain's butt. That's basically, yes. Sorry, I cut you off.
No worries. Would you like to tell us about Outcast?
Okay. Outcast is a fairly loose, put-together series right now because I did it for a superhero contest. And basically, it follows a girl. Her name's Annie. She's like 16 years old, and she's, you know, living life as a semi-orphaned teenager. And she basically goes to this party, and she winds up taking this particular pill. And these pills are actually distributed by the government for their soldiers specifically, aside from this one white pill that winds up getting circulated because it's basically you can get people high but can't give people powers, until of course Annie takes it, and instead of getting her high, she winds up acquiring superpowers. So it's an action adventure set in 2238, where we gotta basically follow the superhero in her tale of becoming a superhero and trying to save everyone in the city from society's tyrannical rule.
Overall, which character do you enjoy working with the most?
That's difficult. That's a hard question. I'd have to say probably Zodiac. And Zodiac is a very old man that wound up being cursed by the gods back in ancient Greece. So he was cursed to walk the plains for 4,000 years while sacrificing via the Zodiac signs to Zeus. There's a lot more to this character personally. Like, he's got pain and struggle and anguish, but he's also trying to work his way into accepting other people and getting close to people while trying to serve his gods. And I feel like his character is so complex, and it's so hard to, I don't know, it's hard to explain this. He's my favorite to work on because there's just so much to him. Despite him starting off as a creepypasta character, now he's completely independent from like this bubble that is pasta fandom, and it's beautiful. He's grown so much as a character over this past few years, and it's my favorite thing to work on.
Where do you see yourself going with your comics in the future?
Personally, I'd love to draw comics for the rest of my life. But of course, I gotta go to school, because then I'll get in trouble with my parents if I don't go. Ultimately, yeah, I would just like to allow my comics to be able to circulate in any language. I want people to look at that and like feel like they can do it too. Comics are very, very important to me personally. They bring people together, and of course they can cause so much to happen, and they can like take people away from the terrible lives that they're living, or if they feel terrible, comics do that. And I want to be able to give everyone this idea that they can read my comics, my friends' comics, some comics across the street, and be able to like be okay, so they could tackle their own. They could become the heroes of their own comic books, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that is it for the comic questions. The next set of questions are to you as a general writer.
Woo!
What story do you wish you had been the one to write?
Oh my God, there's this one pasta story. I think it's called The Strangest Videotape I'd Ever Seen. And it's my favorite story ever. Like, that is my favorite story. I've listened to it a billion times. I wish I was the one to write that, honestly. I'm so jealous that they did that. It's just so amazing. The twists and turns of that story is so awesome. That would be probably number one.
Who are some of your favorite writers?
I'm going to sound so like outdated. So I like William Shakespeare and Edgar Allan Poe specifically. Those two definitely get my stories going. I love Poe's dark stories, of course, and then I like when I read Shakespeare's twist. My personal favorite from Shakespeare's Hamlet. Everybody dies, and it's the greatest thing in the universe. Especially for this fandom. The greatest thing in the universe.
Where do you get your inspiration?
That one's hard. I guess reading or listening, because eventually I want to be, taken seriously as a horror writer, and to be able to eventually get my stories narrated. I don't know. It doesn't matter by who, but I think seeing my friends have had a couple of their stories narrated and seeing like they can do it, I'm like, that really gets me on the roll. Like, oh, I got to do something that's worth reading and something that's good enough for the fandom to be considered, you know, good horror. So that's definitely what gets me to keep going.
How has writing changed you in your life?
Writing's changed a lot. Honestly, a while ago, I was on fan fiction. I started off a fantastic writing career that was brutally cyberbullied and ended. And I wound up stop writing, and then I started up again. And I found that there is some stuff, because I'm not quite great at drawing everything yet, there's a lot of things that I can explain in writing that I can't necessarily draw out. So it's definitely given me this whole new spin on, oh, I might not be able to do everything that I like, draw everything, but I can also write it out and give everyone like this mental image of what's going on. And that's cool. Like to be able to portray a story or portray an idea in more than one area or more than one way is so cool that I was just like, oh, maybe I should actually try to pick it up again. And my English teacher for 12th grade, he was very pro writing. He's like, you may not be the best right now. You may not be the best tomorrow, but you're getting somewhere with these ideas and you should not give up. One person may have stopped you then, but don't let that one person stop you now. So that, like, being able to change somebody's perspective on something via writing, just the same as comics, is something that definitely has changed me personally.
Why did you start writing?
I figured, why not? And as I said, I was totally kicked out of the can when I was younger, and then I picked it up again. I do definitely have to say horror is something I never thought I'd write. And when I found myself being able to do it, I was just like, oh, this is something I'm actually good at. I should keep trying it.
What story are you most proud of writing?
It's really long, but I have this story called It Lives in the Shadows. And it's basically about this head-eating parasite living in this man's body. It's probably my favorite thing I've ever written, ever. Because everything else is just kind of but that one, it had a lot of elements I wasn't used to writing. And I felt like when putting it together, it was okay for me. Like, I'm proud of it. Like, I'd be like, hey guys, go read the story. It's fine. Look at it. It's beautiful.
What is the earliest story you remember writing?
Oh dear, this is middle school. It was absolutely terrible. It was called 4 Children, 4 Elements, and it was basically, you know, general 7th grade weeb trash. 4 characters had their siblings, and they all had elemental abilities, and they went on this crazy adventure with these fantastically named characters like Venom and Spike and something else or other. I don't remember all the details, but I do know that it was absolutely terrible. I had like villains that were introduced but never visited again, and I had like problems for no reason. Like, oh, now she's dying, but don't look over here, this stuff. It was so bad. But that's definitely the first story I remember writing. I did finish it though. I was proud of myself for that one. 60-something pages, and just for a 7th grader, that was great for me.
Okay, we are on the last question for you. What is a fun fact about yourself?
I am the queen of irony. I cannot watch a horror movie. I cannot watch gore. I don't like scary stuff personally, but I will write you the nastiest damn thing. I can draw a man eating someone else, but don't ask me to watch it. But I got made fun of a couple of times. They're like, so you just told me a story about that, how that guy's eating that other guy, but you can't watch The Walking Dead without feeling queasy? Yeah, basically. And they're just like, God dang it, Tobi. That's really the funniest of the facts for me.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
Don't give up, even though people are pricks. Everyone's going to be a prick. Don't give up whatever the hell you're doing.
Okay, to anyone who hasn't already, check the description down below for a link to Tobi's DeviantArt. Go check her out and show all sorts of love and support. And thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. This is a lot of fun. If you need me on anything else in the future, I'm always open.
All right, that is it for now. So bye, everyone.